Dark Phoenix, the last X-Men film in this X-Men saga now that Fox has been bought out by Disney. Is it a fantastic ending? Is it worth checking out this weekend? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler-free review for Dark Phoenix. So, is it a great ending to this X-Men franchise, and is it worth checking out this weekend? Well, the answer to that first question, no. I probably wouldn't say this is a great ending to the X-Men franchise. Is it worth checking out this weekend? Yeah, I would definitely say it is. I was entertained beginning to end, and I think I'm going to give this movie a B-, which is just slightly above average. Now, for me, B+ to A+ is a movie that I want to see again, probably like right away, and I definitely want to own. This one, I'm glad I saw it on the big screen. I think it's big screen worthy, and you would enjoy it more on the big screen versus, waiting till it's on Netflix or something like that, or just waiting for Blu-ray. I feel like if you're going to get all the enjoyment out of this you're going to get, see it on the big screen. But there were definitely some weaker story elements in this one, and there was some weird character development that probably wasn't my favorite. But let me hit some of those positives. One of the big positives for me, one of the first thing that jumps in my mind is the musical score in this movie. Like, Jean Grey's theme, whenever the Phoenix powers were flowing, like, she had this, musical theme whenever that stuff was going on that I really liked, and it's kind of stuck in my head right now. So that was something I really liked. Something else I liked, and the big thing that kept me entertained, take some of those weak story points and, take them out of the picture, some of those weird character development things and take them out of the picture. When it just got to the X-Men action, when mutants were fighting each other, when powers were put on display, I enjoyed that. I thought the action sequences in this movie were pretty cool. I enjoyed some of those moments where we really got to see Jean Grey use her powers. Like, there were some scenes that I was like, now that's really cool looking. Like, it was cool looking, and one or two places it was pretty clever what they did. Like, there was a scene between her and Magneto that I thought was kind of cool, and there's a couple other scenes, like with her and Charles, for instance. There's a scene there that I'm not going to tell you about because this is a spoiler-free review, but it was pretty cool. So there's definitely some pretty cool moments with Jean Grey's powers. Now, diving into some of those negatives, I mean, the biggest negatives is, like, some of the character development. When I say character development, I'm definitely going to talk about Charles. He was nowhere near as strong in this movie as he's been in other movies. Like, he's one of my favorite characters, and I love James McAvoy as an actor. So I don't think James McAvoy, in terms of acting, did a bad job, because I've seen that dude act, and he's freaking spectacular. I've seen him do this role several times. I just feel like there was something in the writing. Maybe it was some of the reshoots, or, when they went back and reshot so much to move it in a different direction. I don't know, but there was an element missing, and one of the things was, like, it started with this element where he's so full of himself at the beginning, and that didn't bother me in the beginning because I figure, okay, character arc. So we're going to go through some humbling and stuff like that. And we definitely do, but there was just still something about James McAvoy in this movie that it just, I don't know, it didn't leave me satisfied. It didn't leave me walking out of the movie like, yeah, Charles had a fantastic character arc, and I'm exceedingly happy with where his character ended up. I am not thinking that at all. So I'm kind of sad about that with Charles. Magneto, like, his character arc wasn't super strong. It was kind of interesting to see where he ended up. And then there's a nagging question in my head, like, wouldn't the world have a far stronger reaction to him working with Apocalypse and using his magnetic powers to reach deep into the earth, and the way he was, like, shaking cities off their foundations? Wouldn't there be more consequences enforced even if he did turn on Apocalypse? It's just a general wonderment. So there were things like that kind of going through my head. So, like, those two characters to me were not as strong as they have been in other movies. Yet still, like, when Magneto fights in some of his action sequences, it was cool to see him fight and cool to see him use his powers as always. So, it's not like it was, like, the worst thing ever, but it also wasn't the best thing ever. You know what I mean? It's like the potential was there for this to be something really cool, and it didn't quite take that. Something else that just kind of leaves me going, is the ending of this movie. Now, without getting into spoilers, the way Days of Future Past ends, and then in Logan, where we know where certain characters end up, it's like, now, wait a minute. There is a huge gap now. Like, the way this movie leaves off, it doesn't, to me, end like it's the closing of this franchise. Instead, it leaves this gigantic gap between the ending of Days of Future Past and the events of Logan, because Days of Future Past, we got to kind of see what, how things looked after the timeline was shifted, after it was changed, and the way this movie ended, nothing was in any kind of place for that, and I'm just like, what? Well, now there's this gigantic gap between this last X-Men movie and this new timeline, and where Days of Future Past actually ended things, and it's like you could use your imagination, you could kind of picture that eventually things would work. It's not unreasonable to think things wouldn't build towards those, moments, but it's like this gap now that will never ever be filled for us. So that's why I also don't feel like this is a great ending to the X-Men franchise. You're missing some stuff here. Come on, fill in the gap! I don't know how you would do that creatively, but I'm just saying it just left a gap and it left me with far more questions. So that's why I'm giving it a B-, because it's not a bad movie. If you're just going in for a fun Marvel superhero flick to watch some action sequences and mutant powers, it's a good time. And for me, that's what it was. I didn't have the highest of expectations for this movie to begin with, but I was just looking to enjoy it, and guess what? I did. I enjoyed it. It definitely has some of its weaknesses, and for those of you who love X-Men, have read the comics, you'll probably find a bit more things to be disappointed with than I did. So you'll have to let me know what you thought, especially those of you who are huge X-Men fans and have all this knowledge in your mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this movie in the comments below. As for me, B-, I found it highly entertaining. I think it's definitely worth seeing on the big screen versus waiting for it to come to the small screen, because I feel like that's where you're going to get the most out of the experience. But seeing it like once is probably enough. It's not anything spectacular, and it's not anything special, especially for being the final X-Men film in this franchise. So what did you think? Let's talk in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified when my spoiler talk drops. My wife is going to join me for that. I'm super excited to have Laura on here to dive deeper into this movie and talk more in depth about those things. Plus, I got a ranking video coming up this weekend, so hit that bell so you're notified when it drops. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.